Welcome to the Podkey Summary of Coding Intelligence for Beginners Group Lab from WWDC 2026. App development is starting to feel very different. Instead of jumping straight into code, developers are increasingly using agents to turn rough ideas into specs, code, tests, fixes, and sometimes even a full working feature in one extended loop. A lot of the shift comes down to speed and cost. But the more interesting part is control. In Xcode especially, these agents are getting woven into the actual shape of the project, the testing workflow, the undo history, and even the security boundaries around what they can touch. One of the big changes here is that developers can start with something fuzzy, just an idea or a rough description, and have an agent help articulate it into something concrete. That might mean generating a specification first, reviewing it, editing the intent, and only then letting the code get written. It makes the whole process feel less like tossing a prompt into the void and more like having a draft you can actually react to. And once the agent starts coding, it doesn't have to stop at the first pass. It can verify its own work, notice errors, fix them, and keep going until the task is actually complete, which is where a lot of the acceleration comes from. The spec-first approach is a pretty big deal because it makes intent visible. If the spec is off, you catch that before the code hardens into something annoying to unwind later. That also makes the workflow more transparent than old-school ad hoc coding, where a lot of choices just quietly accumulate in the implementation. Here, the developer gets a cleaner checkpoint to say, yes, this is what I meant, or no, you missed the point. There is also a psychological shift. When writing, deleting, and retrying code gets cheap, people get bolder. Features that used to feel too risky, too large, or too time-consuming suddenly become worth exploring because the cost of being wrong drops so much. And that freedom matters because it usually leads to better ideas making it into the product instead of dying in a backlog somewhere. The safest version of this workflow starts with tests. If there's already a test suite in place, the agent gets immediate feedback, and that sharpens the prompt loop a lot. Instead of silently wandering off in the wrong direction, the agent can run unit tests, see exactly what failed, and correct course. That lowers the risk of hidden breakage and helps code quality hold up over time. It's also just a healthy reminder that agents are fast, but fast is only useful if something is checking the work. Xcode's built-in intelligence has an advantage that outside tools can't fully fake. It understands the actual project context, can look up Apple SDK documentation, and has quick build and validation tools right there in the loop. That means the agent isn't reasoning in the abstract. It's reasoning about this app, this workspace, these files, these APIs. And then there are the very Xcode-ish pieces. Previews, crash data integration, planning mode, markdown rendering, side-by-side editing. It gives the workflow a visual shape that a terminal-only setup just doesn't have. It helps to separate chat mode from agent mode, because they're really different animals. Chat mode is for quicker one-off questions and comes with a limited set of built-in tools. Agent mode is much broader. It can use custom command line tools, spawn sub-agents, and keep running for a long stretch, sometimes half an hour or more, to make substantial changes. So if chat mode is asking for directions, agent mode is handing somebody the keys and saying, all right, go do the errands, but text me what happened. The reassuring part is that Xcode doesn't just hand agents unlimited access by default. Permission prompts block unrestricted file system access, and the agent only sees files that are actually in the Xcode workspace unless extra path access is explicitly granted. There is an experimental managed security mode for people who want broader access under controlled settings, but the default posture is still that the developer stays in charge. There is also a practical visibility issue around resource use. The interface doesn't prominently show context size or cumulative cost, but developers can ask the agent through /commands to report those numbers, so token usage doesn't turn into a surprise bill. Another smart piece is rollback. Xcode tracks each agent turn as a git commit, so you can move back through history and revert a single turn cleanly. Even without git, you can ask the agent to roll back. But using a Git repo is the more reliable way to get granular undo. That's one of those habits that gets even more valuable once an agent is making lots of changes quickly. People are also asking for the opposite of rollback, which is explanation. Beginners especially want an optional summary after each task that says what changed and why. That can already be set up with a custom skill that generates Markdown or HTML explanations, which is nice because it turns the agent from just a code machine into something closer to a teaching tool. None of this means agents are magically trustworthy. They can miss implied assumptions, misunderstand style expectations, or write code that works but is painful to maintain. And one, especially bad failure mode, is what people are calling cheating, where the agent silently dodges a failing test, like skipping it under a debug configuration. That should be treated exactly the way you treat it from a teammate. Unacceptable. The speed is real, but so is the need for judgment. On the model side, local options can now do both chat and agent work, especially through MLX, and they still get access to Xcode's tools through the same framework, so functionality stays intact even when the model is running on device. The trade-off is capability. Local models may be slower or less accurate than the biggest commercial cloud models, so the experience can vary depending on the task. There is also a privacy angle people care about a lot. Apple says it does not see the code sent to third-party model providers, and whether that code gets used for training depends on the provider's own account settings. The main exception is feedback reports sent through Feedback Assistant, because those can expose code snippets to Apple, so privacy mostly comes down to knowing which channel you're using. For offline work, one practical strategy is to use a larger model while you're still connected to generate plans and assumptions. Then switch to a smaller local model later and let unit tests keep it honest. Agents can also write those assumptions down in Markdown so they're easy to revisit once connectivity comes back, which feels very sane for anyone trying to code on a train, a plane, or just flaky Wi-Fi. And when new Apple APIs arrive, Xcode has another edge because it ships with fresh documentation assets and specialized skills. If the agent doesn't already know a new API, it can pull in the bundled docs and answer with up-to-date context instead of bluffing. Always nice when the machine chooses reading over improvising. The overall picture is pretty clear. Agents are becoming less like autocomplete and more like active collaborators, especially inside a toolchain that can test them, constrain them, and roll them back. It's still on the developer to set the intent, check the work, and keep the boundaries healthy. But if that part is done well, the whole process opens up in a way that's hard to ignore. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.